And why has God allowed wickedness and suffering? Imagine this. You are a renowned professor of mathematics, celebrated for your groundbreaking theories and decades of teaching. One day, in the middle of a class filled with eager students, a young, self-assured student arrogantly stands up. He challenges your teaching methods, belittles your credibility, and claims that, being smarter and more capable, he could teach the class better than you. The entire room turns silent, waiting for your reaction. What would you do? 1. Would you immediately dismiss the student and rebuke his arrogance? 2. Would you send him out of the classroom and continue teaching as if nothing happened? 3. Or would you hand him the chalk, step aside, and let him demonstrate his superiority before the class, giving him the freedom to prove his claims? Now, picture again. This time, you are a wealthy investor and philanthropist. During your travels, you discover an underdeveloped, impoverished country where citizens struggle below the poverty line. Though unaware of the abundant natural resources beneath their soil, they live in ignorance, suffering from illiteracy and lack of opportunity. Out of compassion and ambition, you reach an agreement with the government. You'll invest heavily in the country, harness its resources, and uplift its citizens. You take out significant loans, purchase land, and build a world-class enterprise that transforms the area, a company equipped with modern quarters, canteens, recreational facilities, and good wages for employees. You hire and train the locals, helping them integrate into the global economy. But a few years into your operation, disaster strikes. A high-ranking employee you trusted begins a smear campaign against you. Through manipulation, he convinces the government to banish you from the country. You lose your hard-earned investment, leaving everything behind to the very people you sought to help. What would you do? 1. Would you just walk away and let the wicked employer and their supporters enjoy and thrive on your hard-earned efforts as if nothing is wrong? 2. Or would you not compromise the system if you can in such a way that they are left to deal with problems far beyond their ability to solve? Consider this. Long before mankind and the earth were created, a highly advanced extraterrestrial civilization already existed in the universe. An intelligent, organized community under divine governance. This is referenced in Job 38:4-7, where these beings, superintelligent by design, witnessed the transformation of the earth and the creation of mankind. One of these beings, envious, greedy, and ambitious, sought to undermine this divine plan. Instead of openly revealing his rebellion, he used a lowly serpent to disguise his identity and carry out his bold and wicked ambitions. Through deceit and cunning, this being led humanity into rebellion against their Creator. As the Bible describes in Genesis 3:1-6:1, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, 'Did God really say, "You must not eat from any tree in the garden"?' The woman said to the serpent, 'We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say, "You must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die." "You will not certainly die," the serpent said to the woman. "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Let's delve deeper into the implications of Genesis 3:4-5. Before we examine the serpent's deceitful statements, it is essential to recall God's clear command to Adam in Genesis 2:17. "But you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die." This was not a vague warning, but an unambiguous statement about the consequences of disobedience, death. God, as their creator and sustainer, had every right to set this boundary for their protection and well-being. Yet, in Genesis 3:4, Satan, speaking through the serpent, directly contradicted God. "You will not certainly die." Here, Satan implied that God was lying, bluffing, or perhaps even incapable of carrying out such a consequence. This was not merely a challenge to the validity of God's words, but an attack on his credibility and authority. If Satan's claim were true, it would mean that God was untrustworthy, his warnings empty threats, and his rule oppressive and unnecessary. In Genesis 3:5, Satan took his deception even further, accusing God of selfish motives. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. This statement carried profound implications. 1. God was allegedly hiding something beneficial. Satan suggested that God's prohibition was not for their benefit but for his own. He painted a picture of God as a ruler who withheld critical and vital knowledge to keep humans subordinate, maintaining control over them for selfish reasons. 2. Rebellion was framed as liberation. Satan presented disobedience as a pathway to self-improvement, enlightenment, and elevation. By eating the fruit, Adam and Eve would supposedly achieve independence and equality with God, no longer needing his guidance or rulership. This was a direct attack on God's leadership, implying that it was deceitful, restrictive, and unnecessary. The response of Eve and Adam, Genesis 3:6. Eve's reaction to the serpent's claims revealed the power of deception and misplaced desires. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. Eve's perspective. For Eve, the serpent's words reframed the tree not as a boundary to protect life, but as a gateway to self-benefit. She saw no more as a benefactor, but as an enemy, and the fruit as a means to gain something God was allegedly withholding. By eating it, she willingly subscribed to rebellion, aligning herself with Satan's accusations against God and seeking what she believed to be personal improvement. Adam's perspective. Adam's choice was different in motivation, but no less significant in consequence. Unlike Eve, Adam was not deceived, 1 Timothy 2:14. He understood the gravity of the situation and the full consequences of disobedience. Yet he chose to join Eve in rebellion, prioritizing his relationship with her over his loyalty to God. Key implications of their actions. 1. The rebellion went beyond eating fruit. The act itself symbolized a rejection of God's authority, trustworthiness, and care. It was a declaration of independence, an assertion that they could define right and wrong without God. 2. Satan presented himself as a better leader. By accusing God of lying and withholding benefits, Satan subtly positioned himself as a better alternative, someone who could guide humanity toward enlightenment, independence, and equality with God. This was not outright demand for allegiance, but a calculated manipulation, designed to make rebellion seem like the path to true freedom. 3. A willing but unwitting choice. By accepting Satan's claims and acting on them, Adam and Eve unwittingly chose Satan as their new leader. Their actions signaled a shift in allegiance from God to the serpent, aligning themselves with his rebellion against God's rulership. 4. A challenge to God's rule. Satan's accusations and Adam and Eve's actions set the stage for a larger issue. Could God's rule truly be trusted? Was rebellion justified? And could humanity thrive apart from their Creator? 5. The root of suffering and wickedness. This rebellion was the seed of all wickedness and suffering. By rejecting God's rule and choosing the serpent's deception, humanity invited consequences that have reverberated throughout history. From this, we see that Genesis 3:4-6 was more than an isolated moment of disobedience. It was a turning point that shaped the future of humanity. God's response to this rebellion is central to understanding why He has allowed wickedness and suffering to exist. Shall we explore this next? Ponder these questions. Did Satan truly have mankind's best interest at heart, as he has often been portrayed in many cults and ideologies? If he did, Why would he lead humanity directly into disobedience to God, knowing full well that God, by his very nature, could not withhold punishment for such an act? If Satan truly cared for Adam and Eve, why didn't he warn them against eating the fruit? Why didn't he offer them a different, safer path to enlightenment? If there was no other route to knowledge, why didn't Satan encourage them to eat the fruit of the tree of life as well? Why didn't he offer them the fruits from the tree of life, which could have countered the death sentence by giving them eternal life? By failing to mention the tree of life or offering them a way to counteract the consequences, Satan's actions make his intentions clear. He was not acting in the best interest of humanity. Rather, he led them into rebellion, setting the stage for their downfall and their separation from God. His goal was not their enlightenment or freedom, but their destruction, by deception, manipulation, and ultimately death. Was Adam and Eve justified in going against the one who called them into existence and gave them everything to enjoy? Consider this. They were created in God's image, placed in a perfect environment, with all the resources for joy, fulfillment, and knowledge. They were provided with everything they needed, yet they chose to rebel against the very source of their existence, guided by a being who had no love or care for them. Were they right to go against their Creator, the one who had given them everything for their good? How God handled the challenge. Let's take a moment to consider the challenge from a divine perspective. Earlier, we imagined the situation where, as a renowned professor, a student stood up to challenge your authority and methods in front of the class. How would you have responded at that moment? Now, let's expand that illustration and put you in God's position. Imagine you are the creator of the universe, the designer of all life, and the one who established everything for good. Humanity, whom you've made in your image, has turned against you, rejecting your authority and defying your commands. How would you respond? If you were in God's position, what would you do? 1. Would you ignore the challenge, pretend that nothing happened, and just continue as if nothing had changed? This might seem like the easiest option. After all, God is sovereign and could simply wipe away the rebellion without even acknowledging it. But this could also lead to resentment and the eventual reappearance of rebellion, as the root of the issue, humanity's desire for independence, would remain unaddressed. Ignoring the rebellion could leave humanity unchanged, unchallenged, and still susceptible to corruption. 2. Would you choose to destroy all the parties involved, eliminate the rebels, and start with a new set of humans? This option would immediately put an end to the rebellion. The consequences would be swift and decisive, and no further disobedience could arise from those destroyed. However, it would also break the relationship between Creator and creation. It would extinguish free will, turning humanity into mere automatons who can never truly learn from their mistakes or grow. In this scenario, the possibility for redemption, growth, and the fullness of life would be lost. Also, the rich essence of his name, Jehovah, he causes to become or fulfill his purpose, this time with Adam and Eve, would be lost. Thirdly, would you step back, allow humanity time to express themselves, and exercise their newfound capacity for self-rule and problem-solving? This choice seems the most complex, and it's the one God ultimately made. Rather than immediately crushing the rebellion, God allowed humanity to experience the consequences of their actions, giving them the freedom to learn, grow, and choose for themselves. By stepping back, God provided humanity with the opportunity to explore their newfound capacity for self-governance, problem-solving, and the consequences of rejecting his rule. This allowed for the possibility of redemption and restoration in the future, even though it came at a great cost. God's decision and the wider universe. Before we continue to reflect on the possible outcomes of God's response to the rebellion, let's consider an even larger perspective. There are far more than just humans in this story. Imagine the broader cosmos, filled with countless civilizations of superhuman intelligence with advanced technology, extraterrestrial beings who have existed under God's sovereignty for billions of years. These civilizations, just like humanity, are subject to God's rule and are aware of his decisions. Now, if God had immediately wiped out the rebels, Satan, and humanity, without allowing them the time to express themselves and experience the consequences of their actions, what would have happened across the universe? Choice 1. Ignoring the challenge and allowing rebellion to go unchecked. If God had ignored the rebellion, pretending nothing happened and simply continuing as if nothing had changed, the effects would have rippled far beyond Earth, the wider universe. That decision would have been a vital tool for Satan to make a case against God. The other extraterrestrial civilizations observing the situation would have seen God's tolerance of rebellion as a precedent. If God let humanity defy his authority without consequence, other civilizations, who are also under his reign, would begin to question his justice and governance. They might take this as a signal that rebellion against God's rule could also be tolerated in their own realms. This could lead to a breakdown of order in the universe, where more and more civilizations follow suit, pushing the limits of defiance and challenging God's authority. The repercussions would be catastrophic. Satan's rebellion would be validated across the cosmos, and the very fabric of divine order that governs the universe would begin to unravel. Satan could even be worshipped for having opened the eyes of those who now followed his lead. Injustice would spread, and God's authority would be undermined, creating chaos and disruption in the entire universe. Injustice demands consequences. Tolerating rebellion without consequence would erode the respect and trust of all beings, both human and extraterrestrial, in God's righteous rule. Rebellion could become the norm, and the vast cosmic order God established would collapse. Choice 2. Destroying the rebels immediately. Now consider what would have happened if God had chosen the other option, wiping out Satan and humanity immediately, eliminating the rebellion without giving time for any expression or growth. Insecurity and loss of trust. If God had acted in this manner, without allowing time for the consequences of disobedience to unfold, his actions might have been interpreted as insecurity. To the extraterrestrial civilizations watching, it might have seemed like God was hiding something. Perhaps he feared losing control, or feared what would happen if he allowed free will to play out fully. This would raise doubts in their minds about God's character. They could interpret his immediate action as a form of corruption or abuse of power, as if he were trying to suppress dissent and freedom of expression, rather than facing it head-on with the integrity of justice. Loss of respect. Rather than maintaining his position of respect as a fair and just ruler, God might lose his standing among the other civilizations. The extraterrestrials could see his actions as a form of authoritarianism, where freedom of speech and expression are not truly allowed. If God were to destroy the rebels without allowing them a chance to express their choices, it would undermine his reputation as a benevolent and just ruler, leading other civilizations to question his trustworthiness. In the eyes of other civilizations, these actions could create a divide. The other civilizations might begin to fear God, seeing him as an unyielding, arbitrary ruler who eliminates those who challenge his authority without due process. This could make them hesitant to engage with him, and over time, it would lead to a loss of loyalty from those who once respected him. Choice 3. Stepping back and allowing humanity time to learn and choose. In this context, we see that God's decision to step back, allow humanity to experience the consequences of their rebellion, and give them time to learn and grow was not just a decision for humanity. It was a decision that affected the entire universe. By allowing humanity the freedom to express their newfound capacity for self-rule and problem-solving, God demonstrated to the extraterrestrial civilizations and the universe that his rule is not based on insecurity or fear, but on justice, freedom, and love. It showed that true freedom involves the ability to choose without fear of retribution and to learn from the consequences of one's actions. This decision also opened the door to redemption, meaning that God was not about destruction, but about giving His creation the opportunity to turn back, repent, and be restored to relationship with Him. This was the most complex and risky choice, but also the most profound. By allowing rebellion to run its course, God set the stage for true justice, freedom, and redemption to be established, first for humanity, and then as a lesson for the universe. Walking away without consequences was not an option. God had clearly stated in Genesis 2:17 that disobedience would lead to death. Allowing Adam and Eve to live eternally in rebellion, free from the consequences of their actions, would have undermined God's justice and made Him appear untrustworthy. Death was the necessary outcome of their choice, and walking away without enforcing it was not an option. Destroying them immediately was also not an option. Immediate destruction, however, would have denied Adam and Eve the chance to explore their supposed godlike independence and test Satan's claims. If Satan's leadership and human autonomy were to be judged fairly, Adam and Eve needed to live and attempt to govern, make decisions, and solve problems without God's intervention. A reset or curse was necessary. As a result, God subjected humanity and the earth to a reset or curse. Genesis 3:16-19 outlines this reset. 1. Pain in childbirth. Verse 16 symbolized the increased difficulties in bringing forth life. Second, marital struggles. V16. Social deterioration evidenced in the breakdown of harmony between people. 3. Cursed ground. V17-18 made survival and prosperity arduous. 4. Death and return to dust. V19. Physiological deterioration leading to death fulfilled God's warning in Genesis 2:17, making clear that rebellion led to inevitable decay and death. Additionally, Romans 8:20 explains that creation itself was subjected to futility by God, allowing frustration and decay to be part of human experience, emphasizing the futility of life apart from Him. Through this reset, God ensured that humanity would face the consequences of their rebellion while still allowing them to explore their independence under Satan's guidance. During this period of testing, God would not step in to fix problems or prevent suffering caused by Satan's rulership and human governance. Just as a professor or an investor would refrain from intervening during such a trial, God allows this process to run its course for a critical reason. In the professor's case, if the professor stepped in to correct the student's errors, it would appear as if he supported the student's flawed methods and rebellion. In the investor's case, if the investor returned to fix the problems caused by the rebellious employer and government, it would undermine the process and promote acts of greed and sabotage. Similarly, God allowing suffering and wickedness ensures that Satan's rulership and humanity's independence are fully tested. If God intervened to prevent suffering, it would give the impression that Satan's rebellion was valid and worth supporting, undermining the entire purpose of the trial. It would be akin to endorsing Satan's claims and his governance, and there would be no sharp distinction between Satan's system and God's. The wisdom behind the reset. God's decision to reset humanity and the earth system was wise and just. It ensured that justice was upheld through death while allowing humanity and Satan time to explore their claims of independence, governance, and capabilities. The suffering and wickedness we see today are the natural outcomes of this period of testing. While painful, it serves a greater purpose: to demonstrate the futility of life apart from God, the inadequacy of Satan's rule, and the ultimate necessity of God's righteous governance. The universal conclusion, Jeremiah 10:23. Jeremiah, an ancient prophet and a close friend of God, made a profound observation in Jeremiah 10:23. I know, O Lord, that the way of man is not in himself. It is not in man who walks to direct his steps. This timeless truth reflects the ultimate conclusion that the entire universe will come to through this period of testing. Humanity, despite its intelligence and ambition, lacks the capability to govern itself successfully. Independence from God leads to failure, suffering, and death. The rebellion, allowed to run its full course, will demonstrate beyond all doubt that only God's leadership can bring peace, harmony, and life to His creation. Just as a professor allows a rebellious student to expose their lack of knowledge, and an investor allows a corrupt system to fail under its own weight, God permits this process so that the truth about human and satanic governance becomes unmistakably clear to all. The universal audience, both human and superhuman, will witness and acknowledge that God alone is just, wise, and worthy of leadership. Thus, God's approach to handling rebellion is not just a demonstration of His justice, but also of His incomparable wisdom. Why this universal conclusion matters. The rebellion of Satan and humanity posed universal questions about God's justice and governance. Just as a professor allows a rebellious student to expose their lack of knowledge, and an investor allows a corrupt system to fail under its own weight, God permits this process to unfold fully. This ensures that the truth about human and satanic governance becomes unmistakably clear to all, including the vast superhuman audience of intelligent beings who have observed God's governance for billions of years. Job 38:4-7. Through this process, the entire universe will see that only Jehovah God possesses the authority, wisdom, and power to rule justly and lovingly. Humanity, despite all its ambition, lacks not only the wisdom and foresight, but also the authority to establish lasting righteous governance. God's approach is not just a demonstration of His justice, but also a revelation of His incomparable wisdom, patience, and rightful position as the sovereign ruler of the universe. The earth and humanity under Satan's control. While God created and owns the earth and humanity, the Bible consistently reveals that these have been handed over to Satan due to the rebellion in Eden. Satan is portrayed as the unseen force behind human governance and the suffering we experience. 1 Job 9:24, "The earth is given into the hand of the wicked." This highlights that governance has been handed over to a wicked power. While God retains ownership, humanity's rebellion allowed Satan to assume control. 2 Luke 4:5-6, "And the devil took him, Jesus, up, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time, and said to him, To you I will give all this authority and their glory, for it has been delivered to me, and I give it to whom I will." Satan openly claims authority over the world's kingdoms, a claim Jesus does not dispute. This confirms Satan's control over human governments and power structures. 3. 1 John 5:19. "We know that we are from God, and the whole world lies in the power of the evil one." This verse explicitly states that Satan's influence permeates the entire world, shaping its systems and policies, manipulating human ambitions and systems for his selfish ends. By deceiving humanity into rejecting God's rule in Eden, he became their de facto ruler. This explains the corruption, injustice, and suffering that dominate human affairs. God, in His wisdom, has allowed this arrangement to continue temporarily to expose the futility of Satan's governance and human independence. This consistent biblical theme underscores why God allows suffering and wickedness, to ensure that all, including the vast superhuman audience, see the inevitable failure of rulership apart from Him. The profound truth in Jeremiah 10:23, that humanity lacks the wisdom, authority, and capacity to direct its steps without God, will be universally affirmed. This issue of rebellion isn't limited to humanity alone. It affects all intelligent creation across the universe. The rebellion that began in Eden not only challenged God's authority on earth, but also raised doubts among superhuman, highly advanced beings who have lived under God's rule for billions of years. These beings, observing humanity's history, are deeply invested in the outcome of this conflict. Every intelligent creature, human or angelic, must choose a side, God's side or Satan's side. The stakes are monumental. The way we live our lives reflects which side we've aligned with in this universal dispute. God has not left us without guidance. Though humanity chose rebellion, God, in His love, did not abandon us to flounder aimlessly. He provided the Bible, a guidebook that reveals His purpose and exposes Satan's lies. It offers practical direction for living in the hope of a future where justice, peace, and order are restored under God's perfect rule. However, most of humanity, either knowingly or unknowingly, aligns with Satan. Now ask yourself, whose side are you on? Aligning with Satan doesn't require openly declaring allegiance to him. Instead, it's often demonstrated through our choices, priorities, and actions. Here are some ways one might show alignment with Satan's rebellion. 1. Rejecting God's standards, living by personal desires or societal norms rather than following the guidance of the Bible, treating God's word as irrelevant or outdated. 2. Seeking independence from God, believing human intelligence, innovation, and governance can solve all problems, prioritizing self-reliance and ignoring the need for God's direction. 3. Engaging in practices opposed to God, pursuing greed, dishonesty, immorality, or selfish ambition, worshiping material wealth, power, or fame instead of valuing spiritual truths. 4. Remaining indifferent, choosing apathy or neutrality, assuming it's possible to remain uninvolved in this universal conflict. Jesus reminds us in Matthew 12:30, "Whoever is not with me is against me." Choosing God's side requires deliberate effort. It means studying the Bible, regularly seeking to understand God's will and applying it in your life. Following God's standards, letting His principles shape your decisions, relationships, and actions. Acknowledging your dependence on God, humbly praying for His guidance and recognizing His sovereignty. Standing firm against Satan's influence, rejecting values and practices that align with selfishness, pride, and rebellion. Choosing to stand with God requires courage, especially in a world dominated by Satan's influence. But God assures us that our loyalty matters, not just to Him, but also to the watching universe. In Proverbs 27:11, He lovingly encourages us, "Be wise, my son, and make my heart rejoice, that I may make a reply to him who taunts me." When we choose God's side and live wisely, we bring joy to His heart. Our faithfulness becomes a powerful answer to Satan's taunts, proving that love for God and trust in His guidance are not misplaced. By siding with God, we participate in the ultimate vindication of His name, justice, and sovereignty. This choice, though challenging, leads to life, peace, and a future under God's perfect rule, a future worth striving for. The issue of suffering and wickedness is so profound that Jesus Himself, in Matthew 6:9, instructed us to pray foremost for the sanctification of our Father's name. "Let your name be sanctified." This is not just a request, but the foundation for hope across the universe. For God's name to be sanctified, His justice and sovereignty must be upheld, and the rebellion of Satan and humanity must ultimately be addressed. In the resolution of this conflict lies the hope of the universe, the restoration of perfect order, and the end of suffering and wickedness. In the midst of suffering and rebellion, God provided a way for humanity to be reconciled to Him through Jesus Christ. But who is Jesus? Why did He come to earth, and why did He have to die? These are pivotal questions for understanding God's purpose in the world and His plan for ultimate salvation. To find the answers to these profound questions, I encourage you to explore my other videos, where I delve deeper into the life and significance of Jesus Christ, His mission, and the purpose of His death. We've explored how God allowed suffering and wickedness as a necessary part of granting humanity the ability to choose between good and evil, and how Satan, through his rebellion, manipulated humanity into choosing rebellion over obedience. Despite the rebellion, God has allowed time for mankind and Satan to test their independence, to let humanity explore its God-given capabilities of self-rule and problem-solving. However, this has come with consequences: death, suffering, and the degeneration of humanity. God has not abandoned us, but instead provided the Bible as guidance, ensuring that the final resolution to this cosmic conflict will vindicate His justice, wisdom, and love. Through the eventual return of His kingdom, God's sovereignty will be restored, and suffering and wickedness will be eradicated. If you enjoyed this video, click like, share, and subscribe. Drop your comments or questions in the comment section below. If you would like to learn more and find practical guidance for your spiritual journey, I encourage you to visit jw.org. There, you can read the Bible online, subscribe to their publications, apply for a free home Bible study, or find nearby meetings. Please note that this is not an official or sponsored channel of the organization. I have personally benefited immensely from the resources on jw.org and deeply appreciate the organization's efforts to share Bible-based truth with the world. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed